Welcome. This is, well, depending on when you're watching this video, this could either be the first video or it could be a video that you're discovering for the first time. However, this is the first video of this particular series, channel, podcast. And I'm going to be talking about mental health, my mental health in particular, because I'm not a qualified therapist. I'm not, a psychologist or anything like that. I'm just a person who has had issues with mental health throughout his life, and I thought that I wanted to share this not because I want attention, but because I want to try and help people and tell people that these things happen, and it's not something to be afraid of. It's not something that you should be embarrassed about, should we say. It is just something that affects a lot of people, and I'm not here to belittle it or make it not be as bad as you think it is, because it is bad, depending on no matter what your mental health is like. If it's bad for you. And what I'm trying to do is to break some of the stigma down, and also tell people that they're not alone, that there are lots of people out there who are going through the same things as they are. There are lots of people going through mental health problems of various types. And so that's really what the idea of this podcast slash YouTube channel is. It's the first time I've done it with a YouTube channel as such. I have had a podcast before. I had problems with that, so I had to leave that behind, and I've come to do it on here now. So this is just a quick overview of what you might come to expect on this channel, and also about talking about mental health, because I think it's important to talk about it. I've had problems with mental health. I'm 47 now, I think, and I've had problems with mental health since I was about 7. I'm going to go into the whys and wherefores of that in another video, but I've had mental health problems for 40 odd years, and during that time I've seen a lot of therapists, I've seen a lot of counsellors, I've seen a lot of doctors, and I've had various treatments, various diagnoses, but all along the journey, I've been trying to not have my mental health dictate my life. That is easier said than done. And there are people out there who will say the typical things like get over it. It's not that, it's all in your mind. Get over it. And sometimes these people mean well. They don't understand how it can affect you, and so they're like, well, it can't be that bad. It's not something physical. You just get out of bed, just go out, just go and do something. Just get out the house. It's very difficult, because explaining it in my terms, if you've got a pain in your leg, like if you've hurt your leg, then the pain's in your leg, and it might stop you from being as active as you normally are, but you can still do stuff. You can still do things that you want to do. But when the problem's in your mind, that controls the whole of your body. And so whether you want it to or not, sometimes your mind will say, actually, no, I'm not going to do this today. And then you just don't. And it can be very hard to then get your brain into gear to actually do stuff. And so that for me has been the main problem I've had. And I've battled through it, and it is a battle. Sometimes it's a battle that you win, sometimes it's a battle that you lose, but it's an ongoing battle. And I'm not necessarily going to explain this in a way that a therapist would, or a doctor would, but this is my interpretation of how I feel and my interpretation of my mental health. And the important thing I think that we need to remember is that everybody is different, and everyone would explain their mental health in a different way, perhaps using different language, perhaps using different analogies. I think it's important that we just have that conversation. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to be saying, well, okay, you're okay to talk about your mental health, but you can't say this word, or you can't say that word. You can't describe it like this or like that, because that's being judgmental, or that's being triggering. And I think it's important just to have that conversation, just to be talking about mental health. Yes, sometimes the terminology can be difficult to get around, and there are some terms you shouldn't say anymore because they're not very pleasant and they're derogatory and stuff like that, of course. But if you're describing your own mental health, and just for argument's sake, we say, "Oh, I'm just crazy." Now, some people would say you can't say crazy. You can't say that you're crazy. But in some ways, that might be how you feel. It might be the only way you can express how you feel on some situations. So I think it's important, rather than to go into the whole situation of talking about what words to use, we should just be talking about mental health and trying to break that stigma, trying to get people to talk about it. So that's what hopefully I'm going to try and do with this podcast and this video, is just to get people to be aware that mental health is something that affects a lot of people. Everyone gets affected differently. There are similarities in some ways, but in other ways there are differences. And your mental health problems are no better or worse than anyone else's. They're your own problems, and they affect you in your own way. And I think it's important that we don't judge some people for the way they deal with their mental health, and judge other people differently for the way they deal with their mental health. It's just a case of getting through it. It's just a case of getting through another day. Sometimes you can breeze through days. Sometimes you can be like, I'm fine. Today I can do anything. And you'll go out and you'll do anything. Other days, getting through the day is a real chore. And I think it's important just to recognise that that's the case. So that is what this podcast and this YouTube channel is going to be about. I hope that you will subscribe if you're on YouTube, because I want to start a kind of a community here. I want to try and get people involved. You don't have to talk about your problems. You don't have to talk about things in the comments, stuff like that. You don't have to go all that, but just to build a community of people who understand each other and get the kind of support from each other. That's what I'm really looking for. So if you do like what you're seeing so far, please do think about subscribing. It would really help. If you're listening to this as a podcast, please do leave a comment if you're able to do so. Follow along if you're able to do so, whatever platform you're listening to me, and hopefully together we can have this journey. And I'll talk about my problems, and I'll talk about things in general that's going on around the world in the news and stuff like that relating to mental health, and hopefully together we can sort some things out. But anyway, I'll see you next time.